All right, everyone. These are the slides for week 13, day 2. A little behind, but hopefully you guys can forgive me a little bit. So today we're going to be talking about the welfare effects of monopoly and market power. So here's the reading. Kind of the introduction to think about where we are. Leaders of large corporations are not big fans of competition, although you commonly might perceive them as so. And the reason for that is the more competition there is, the less able they are to charge markups over the marginal cost of how much it costs to create their product. And this can lead to long-run economic profits, which CEOs are, kind of trying to get. And so that's why they don't like competition. And so we need to understand, where does market power come from? And then furthermore, how does it affect the welfare of producers and consumers and overall society compared to the benchmark case of perfect competition? And so we want to know, is this monopoly man making us worse off? And before I get into that, I want to talk briefly about the different sources of market power. So here, this is in a table form, and we're just going to go through them one by one real quickly. So the first type of ways to acquire market power is just naturally. And the reason that it's called natural is because there's no regulations or artificial control. It's just that one firm can produce the entire output at a lower cost than several firms producing small slices of that output. And you can really think about that as like water and electric companies. So it'd be really weird if there were like two power companies. Think about like all the utility poles. Everyone would like kind of have every company would have their own set of utility poles, or in this example, I couldn't even find any pictures with lots of utility poles or pipes in a neighborhood. And so it would be like imagining like all these pipes in this really like fancy residential neighborhood where people like obviously like really care about their lawns. They wouldn't be cool with seeing all these pipes. And so these water and electric companies have really high fixed costs that make it easier for one firm to produce all the good. But then another way is a control of a physical resource, and no one enters if they can't produce. It's pretty obvious, right? So this company is De Beers, and they do diamonds. And they used to be sold in unopened boxes with unknown quantities, which is just really wild that you would just show up to a convention and they'd be like, here's a box of diamonds, you don't get to look inside it, cost X. So I think that's really interesting. And then another aspect of this is they tell you how much to pay for diamonds for an engagement ring, because they're like, it's supposed to be whatever, like 10% of your yearly income or something like that. If you were in a perfectly competitive market and someone said you're supposed to spend X% on this product, you would tell them to go like kick rocks and find a different supplier, because there's not just one person to buy from. But De Beers, they tell you exactly how much you're supposed to pay too. So it's kind of crazy when you think about it like that. Legal monopoly, this one's not too hard. It's just legally bestowed upon a sole producer. So the government just regulates out competition or entry for various reasons. An example, this is the post office. I'm not going to get into this one. Patents, trademarks, and copyrights are another way. So we want to provide an incentive for firms to develop products that help people. And one of the ways that we can do that is giving them a sole rights on a developed product, usually for a limited amount of time. And so that way they're able to recoup some of the development costs of creating a drug or a new invention or some new research. And so that's another way. And this is a famous case of Daraprim with Martin Shkreli. And they basically, I'm not sure exactly, but he gained control and jacked the price up of I forget what drug it is. Daraprim. We should probably look that up. And then the final one is intimidating potential competitors. So if you're a really big business like Walmart and you want to keep a smaller business out, you can just threaten to cut prices because you can take the loss for a little while. Whereas a smaller business, they can't afford to take losses like you can. So you kind of take advantage of your size. And so one way to think about that is like Walmart with their rollback prices. They can roll back their prices and go lower when they want to. And they have all those aisles that are usually unused, but they have the capacity to engage in price wars. They have the ability to, if they want to cut prices and serve a lot of demand. And kind of something that I alluded to here that we're going to get more into is this is kind of like a dynamic game where there's like a firm making a decision and then a firm sees that and makes their decision. And that's where we're going towards pricing. And so I showed you kind of how marginal revenue is not equal to marginal or demand when a firm has market power or for monopolies. And what doesn't change is the rule for profit maximization, which I think we've already talked about. I'm going to hit more on these slides. Recall the profit formula is just how much you sell times the price you sell it for minus the cost of selling a unit times the amount of units you sell. And so you can think of that P minus C as the margin on an individual product, the price market above how much it costs you. And what we did in perfect competition was we added this cost as a function of Q, where it says the cost per unit depends on the quantity produced sold. And remember, the marginal costs are increasing because a diminishing marginal product of labor is decreasing, causing marginal costs per unit to increase. And so this increasing marginal cost is why we don't just like keep selling them. And then with monopoly and market power, what we're doing is we're also endogenizing, making price a function of how much we sell, because your marginal revenue depends on how much you sell. It's not just a flat line equal to like the demand. It's not perfectly elastic, and this causes the price that you sell all the units at to depend on how many units you sell. And so in perfect competition, there's no market power. The price is 4 in the market, and so for every individual seller, which we assume there's a lot of them, the price is 4 for as many as they can make. This is the individual firm's demand curve. It's perfectly elastic, as many units as you can sell at 4. And you're going to get $4 for each additional unit you sell, no matter how many you sell, because you're small relative to the size of the market. Like, you know, you're selling like 1,600 where the market is demanding like 300 million. So you're just a small part of that. But we need to go beyond that to the monopoly case. And in the monopoly case, we know that the firm has total market power. So there's no like second demand curve for the other firm, because there's no other firms. And so this one firm is facing this entire demand curve right here. And it's not like flattening out. It's just, you know, downward sloping like this. And so their change in profit from producing an additional unit going from Q minus 1 to Q is how much profit they were making at Q minus 1 plus the revenue of the Qth unit minus the cost of the Qth unit, the cost to produce it. And then there's this other term over here which I really want to emphasize here. And so this is the price reduction on all the units before unit Q. So when you increase the price, or reduce the price, you reduce the price for all the previous units too, and that moves you down the demand curve. And so that effect is it's going to reduce your revenue for all of the Q minus 1 units. And what that looks like is this picture on the right here, where if you're at P1, you're a monopoly, and you decide you want to reduce the price to price 2, then you lose price 1 minus price 2 on all Q1 units. I mean, you do gain this box B from selling more units, but that selling those more units at a lower price. And so, is it smart to change your price? It depends on how elastic the curve is and how it affects your revenue on the first unit compared to all the units before it. And so something important in this is measuring market power. We're going to avoid this a little bit, but it's important that you know how it's done in like antitrust law, telecommunications, like the FCC, and healthcare. And so they use a concentration ratio, which measures the market share of the N largest firms, and usually N is like 4 to 8. And then there's the Herfindahl-Hirschman index, which also measures the market share of the N largest firms, but it accounts for different sizes of the N firms. So with a concentration ratio, you can get the same number for, you know, a firm with the top 4 firms. One firm has 77%, and the other 3 collectively have 3%. So it's like 80. But that you'd also get 80 if each firm had 20. But if you think about it, there'd be different levels of market power in there because in the second one, everyone's equitable. In the first one, there's one firm really dominating the market. And so this Herfindahl-Hirschman index seeks to adjust for different sizes of the N firms. And so these are really commonly used in antitrust law, telecommunications, and healthcare. And so we want to look at how monopoly affects welfare, and our benchmark case is perfect competition. So this should look quite familiar to you by now. The total surplus is, you know, the area below the demand curve, above the price in the market for buyers, and the producer's surplus is the price received above costs for the producers, and you add them all together and you get total surplus. So this is kind of our benchmark, and you see it's like this whole triangle all the way to equilibrium, and now we need to compare that to monopoly. So here's our monopolist, and he's facing the entire demand curve here, and since when they lower the price, they get less for each of the other units. That causes the marginal revenue curve to slope downwards faster than the demand curve, and so marginal revenue is no longer equal to demand. And so the firm chooses their optimal Q star for the firm by choosing the Q where marginal costs intersect with marginal revenue. So right here at this point, and then the firm needs to know how much to charge. And the firm goes from this point where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost up to the demand curve and charges that P, because they can sell the same amount at this Q star, regardless of whether they charge this P down here or this actual optimum for them P star. And so they were going to charge the higher price because they can, and not sell less products and therefore make less revenue. And so what happens is the efficient quantity is where supply intersects demand, this black dot that's labeled efficient quantity, but the monopoly is producing less than the socially efficient quantity and producing the optimal quantity for the monopoly. And so they're charging above the socially efficient price P star and producing less than the socially efficient Q star. And this is creating this pink box of deadweight loss, which is good for the firm's profits, but bad for society. And so, but it can also help a firm earn profits in the long run, which is different than perfectly competitive markets. And so that's attractive for firms to try to increase their market power, thus why executives are not a big fan of competition. And so that's everything we're going to do today. I showed you that market power can come from natural cost advantages or barriers to entry, or, you know, all those different things we went over. And this market power causes demand to not equal marginal revenue. And market power is, you know, maximized when there's no other sellers or for a monopolist. And so the market power causes this reduction in consumer welfare due to the incentives for monopolies to produce less and charge more for it than would be socially optimal. And so that is everything for today, and I will see you in the next video.